Yeah.
Okay, guys, welcome back. We do have a very special guest. As you can see, it is Stani, the founder of Aave, or at least one of the founders. Please tell people who you are, Stani. I know many people know you, but if somebody doesn't know, who is Stani?
Yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of Aave, and Aave is basically one of the well-known DeFi projects on Ethereum. And yeah.
And it's one of the projects we've been covering a lot, and many people know about it, but most people don't know that it was called ETH Land in the past.
Exactly.
So can you just take us through the timeline? How did you end up with Aave where it is right now?
Yeah, so ETHLand was a project we started 3.5 years ago. So we wanted to build a lending protocol on Ethereum, and we started to build it. And I think roughly 2017, the beginning, we launched the protocol on mainnet, and since then we have been building. The idea was just to start a community and do a small project and see how it goes. But basically, it ended up us building more and more stuff over the years. So here we are.
And I feel it's always like that. People who just say, let's just do something, it's going to be a hobby project, but then it blows up. Normally, that is how a lot of the success stories are. And at that point, Maker was around. What kind of other DeFi infrastructure was around? And what kind of ecosystem did we see at that time?
Yeah, at that time, there wasn't anything. I mean, there was one decentralized exchange called EtherDelta. And basically, we came up with a lending protocol. And I think it was in somewhere 2018, at some point, what happened is basically Maker came, and then we had first stable coins on Ethereum, and then later Uniswap came, so you could actually trade them pretty agnostically. So we actually started, and Kyber, of course. Kyber was before that, so in Bancor. So we started to have like an ecosystem, and that ecosystem started to actually like build DeFi users, because it's kind of like boring if you can use one thing, but when there is a whole composability at your hand that you can do a bunch of other stuff at the same time, it's that is what like builds the DeFi super users. So it was a bit different back then.
And I was listening to this very nice podcast with Vance. I don't remember his last name, but it was on Bankless. And you probably know him because he was talking about you. They have this VC firm. And what was interesting that I learned, and I mean, everyone knows it, but it's just that he said it in such a nice way, that DeFi is not only about tech composability, but it's also about community composability, that when you have different DeFi projects working together and composing, you really have communities also merging. And then you do have this Link Marines, Synthetic Spartans, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So how has your community grown? How did you manage to grow your community to where it is right now? And how should people do it?
Yeah, I agree with Vance in the sense that it's quite a lot about human composability. You can create nice products, but basically some other kind of product might eat your product, and then like the stuff that you're left with is basically with your community, which is your strength. So your project is as strong as your community. That goes without saying, and nothing else matters. Like you can fail and you can succeed in products how many times you want, but at the end of the day, it's the people behind it and who are supporting you, and that's important. And I think like for us, what has been a very cool thing is that we have people since the beginning and still following our project and coming to us and saying, I've been here from the day one, and that's like something that we appreciate a lot, because many people run away during the crypto winter, but we have a lot of community members still here and supporting us, and that gives a lot of strength, and it's very diverse. I mean, there's over 160,000 holders of the LEND token, and it shows that it's a diverse community. It might not consist of like big holders, but I love it in the sense that it's more democratic distribution, and in governance it's important that actually the wider spectrum you have, the diversity, that will affect like how you govern. Like the whole community will affect how your project will be governed in the future.
What are your favorite projects right now in the DeFi ecosystem, except for Aave, of course?
Yeah, I really like what Andre is doing in Wiren. I love the fact, kind of like, because there's a lot of cool innovation, and he's using quite a lot of Aave in the sense that, for example, like one of the vaults, which is called YA link vault, which consists of when you deposit a link into Aave, for example, if you want to leverage or just borrow, you get in return a link, which is interest-bearing link token. And then you can take it and put it into the YA link vault in Wiren. And this is where the composability comes. And then in the background, what actually Andres Vault is doing, it uses that a link as a collateral in Aave and pulls basically credit from Aave. So this is so-called credit delegation that he is using there. So basically, those people who are depositing link into Aave and not borrowing, they could just basically take that a link and deposit there into this vault. And what happens is that Andre is borrowing with his smart contracts the funds, and he's putting those funds, let's say USDC, into places where he can actually get more yield. So that is like this whole composability thing. And why I like to present this project especially is that basically the community has been doing like very good job, but also it shows that the composability or let's say permissionless kind of like a permissionless access into DeFi is not just the user access, but also access to build. So anyone can build any kind of cool product or like service to the end users and any part of the world. And that's the cool thing. And you have all this liquidity and network effects available to you.
Yeah, and without crypto, it's impossible. You don't have a financial development environment that you can just go and build new things and try them out with the user base, with real money in the traditional space. And in terms of Yearn, of course, it's a very big project now, and the coin is going through the roof, and it's very, very surprising, I think, to many, because it's such a new project as well, just a few weeks. But at the same time, how do you see the current yield farming scene with Sushi, Kimchi, Yam, all of these things? Do you think that it's a zero-sum game, that we're just shuffling money around, or is it actual innovation and actual wealth creation that is happening right now with all of this that is going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, definitely in one way I see this, the yield farming as a way to create incentives and incentivize liquidity providers, and it's a fascinating way. But on the other hand, I see like it becoming like quite crazy. I mean, it reminds me a bit of like all this like sushi, kimchi, and all. I mean, you can't even follow this stuff. And like in terms of like zero-sum game, like end of the day, the gas will eat you, and kind of like it's an issue. But what's very wrong about the stuff that is going on is that they call it fair launch, but it's actually not a fair launch. It's a way where liquidity providers, people with large amount of money, can show up, grab free tokens, and people who don't have that much money, basically, they have to buy it because they cannot farm. I mean, if they farm, they get nothing. So they have to buy those amounts. So these whales are basically getting free money and dumping it to the people who are buying. In one way, you have more buying power, of course, when you buy directly, but I don't know. For me, it feels a bit like surrealistic because we're printing so much money, and it reminds me of like all this kind of like a Bitcoin forks that we had, like and like because every fork kind of creates money at the same time, and we see like the similar methodology here. And I think those coins that are like useless, they will go to zero. But some of the projects are pretty interesting if they can rely on innovation and their communities is supporting them. They will do well. But those who are not, they will go to zero. That's for sure.
So when when I was studying Aave and Kyber and all this DeFi space, my mind was literally blown because it's creating so much real wealth. True wealth. So for example, when you guys released flash loans, it was such an innovation because now all markets can be super efficient, all arbitrage can be used by anyone. You don't need capital, you can get capital from the blockchain. But now with all of this yams and sushi and all of that, it feels more to me that we are entering a bit of a danger zone because I truly don't want DeFi to get a bad name. And if you remember in 2016, ICOs had a good name. It was cool. Oh, we're launching an ICO. Wow, ICO. It's a new way of raising capital. It's so innovative. And then very quickly, ICOs became a dirty word. So one scenario that I see that this could go terribly wrong is if we see some kind of price volatility in ETH, where all of these different yield farming positions now maybe start getting to get liquidated because people are locking up here, then they get a token, they lock it up again, and then they get a new token, they lock it up, and obviously they could get liquidated in this different in this chain at any point. So how do you view this? Are you worried with this yield farming? Because it seems that in the past weeks we've taken it to a whole new level, just in the recent 2 weeks maybe.
Yeah, I am concerned. Like I think like because it seems that people think more about like now it's a good time to raise funds, so we basically we fork something or maybe like we do this distribution, we give the tokens, and then we get the audits. Especially the security part is very worrying for me because like many of the projects they basically want to launch without an audit, and things might go wrong, and they have historically been kind of in that situation. And I'm super worried about this. Like, I think like it's okay to launch new products and basically get investors or create the community if you do it securely, and secondly if you have some innovation. Because I mean, forking just for the sake of forking and so forth, I mean, it's just fractionalizing liquidity, which is just kind of like a negative effect for DeFi, unless you can build innovation, which is amazing. But I think it's very problematic, especially like in 2017, we had a problem that people were thinking like you just need a basically white paperware, and you sell it to investors. And the only threshold was basically that you needed to create a easy distribution contract. And kind of now what we see happening like in the yield farming era, or this kind of fair launch model, is that people tend to usually create the product first and then get the liquidity by incentivizing. But now we see also models where actually there isn't even that, but there's a model where you just like fork a product that already exists, and then you basically create a community around it. So it's an interesting way as well. But what's important to know that it does fractionalize liquidity, and secondly you need innovation. So you need to innovate something there. And probably it's also that people are forking the old stuff. So I mean, it's kind of like problematic. But I think we're entering a dangerous zone, and I think people should need to understand like what they're doing in DeFi.
And what we've seen recently is SushiSwap. So as you say, just copy the code and then you add incentives on top, and you take all the innovation that the original project has done, but now you're also having a token that the original project doesn't have. Yeah. You can get this start of liquidity and users. Do you think that it is actually a danger for Uniswap? Because Uniswap still has the team, they still have the trust and innovation. So I think it depends whether SushiSwap can continue and innovate themselves, or if it's only the token and that's it, then I'm a bit more bearish on SushiSwap. And are you worried yourself that somebody takes Aave and then creates some kind of farming scheme on top of it that becomes super popular, and now you see way more interest in that Aave clone? How do you view this copying that is going on?
Yeah, I think in one way, in terms of, for example, in kind of like in our situation, we care about our community. We want to serve our community. Whatever others are doing, it's kind of like their thing. And I think like in terms of like Uniswap, I think they're in an interesting position because now a lot of people are putting liquidity there and taking kind of like using the LP tokens to mint basically sushi, and it brings a lot of liquidity now into Uniswap, which is interesting because practically Uniswap is now getting new users, a lot of new users, and a lot of value locked. But at the same time, what's happening is that once that distribution is over and the SushiSwap starts, basically, and they get rewards for providing liquidity into SushiSwap. So when they're live, actually, that means basically that that liquidity which we saw today might go actually into SushiSwap, because as you said, they have a token and basically Uniswap doesn't have. And remember the times when basically after the ICO period, like everyone was kind of like a anti-token against like
yes
stuff like that, and like and someone, it's kind of like hurting yourself, because a token is a way to empower the governance and the community, and you get people involved that way and in the cryptographic form. So it's useful, and it's just like basically depends like what people are how they get it and how it's distributed and so forth. And there's going to be like probably very interesting like one thing I would like to see is like new like distribution models, kind of like I mean we see like the problem with this kimchi and all the stuff, like we should see more and more like innovation. We see some, but people who are thinking new products, like they should come up with new distribution models as well. I mean, there is still a lot of things to experiment, and I think we haven't reached the like full capacity on that yet.
And right now what we're seeing is a lot of innovation from you guys as well. Just today we saw the situation with mortgages, with Realty, and you also have governance version 2, I know. So let's focus on the future of DeFi. How do you envision it? So will people buy their houses and apartments from the blockchain, or will they still use the banks in some fashion? What kind of chunks from the banking space can we take to DeFi in the near future, in your view?
Yeah, I mean, in some extent, we can take quite a lot of pieces, definitely. Like once I mean, of course, like finance in on-chain, it allows to do a lot of things. But when we have the whole economy going into on-chain, then we can do quite a lot of things. So, for example, if we have e-commerce on-chain, we have basically collectibles. We have basically different kinds of parts of not just DeFi. And DeFi kind of like will empower those particular spaces. So I think that will like bring us closer what we can do in traditional finance. What's cool about the Realty is that they basically tokenize houses, and that's a cool thing. They tokenize houses and they can be traded in Uniswap. So all of their users can basically own a piece of property or the whole property. And basically what we're creating at Aave is a market where those properties can be used as a collateral, and you can borrow stable coins against them. And that's a very kind of like a more bigger step towards what's happening in traditional finance and getting those real assets. Of course, all of the real assets that are, when we talk about real assets, even like, let's say, currency, US dollars, they always have a custody risk. So this is something that we need to always mind, that when we put stuff into the blockchain, basically we need to mind that someone is holding that amount in
yes.
somewhere. And this is the kind of thing we need to think. But if you overcome that idea of that, it's fine if there is good safety procedures and it's decentralized enough, or you can even take a credit default swap on that from DeFi, for example. So definitely, I think the direction where we are going is getting more that we're getting more financial products that are in traditional finance into DeFi, and I think there are going to be a lot of primitives that we're going to build that doesn't exist yet, and that's the like experimental part that I really like.
And I think that is truly mind-blowing. That's another piece of news that really blew my mind as well, that anywhere in the world, whoever you are, you can go to Uniswap, you can buy real estate. Right now in the US, because I think Realty is in the US, but in the future is going to be in other countries as well. This was completely impossible before. Imagine living in some kind of African country or South America. How do you buy real estate in the US? You can't. You can't. Now you open a browser, you have MetaMask, bam, Uniswap, just $100 you can buy a piece of a token. It's mind-blowing. And you say interesting thing that yes, this token, it's not that you actually own the real estate. You get a portion of the company that owns that real estate, and what if they go bankrupt, and so on and so forth. And it is a very important question to keep in mind, but I think the community will still adopt it, because look at Tether, look at different stable coins. Nobody knows Tether, whether it's backed or not, but one Tether is $1. That's the only thing we care about. So the same will be with this real estate. I think people will not really care that much about this risk that you say. It's important to keep it in mind, but in terms of adoption, I think it will be this quickly adopted. It's a no-brainer. And I just see so much need for this across the world. There are many people in many countries that have all kinds of problems with moving their capital and investing however they want. And now you can do real estate investment on the blockchain. It's fantastic without any intermediaries.
Yeah, totally.
And in terms of what you guys are doing with governance, version 2, what is important with that, and what kind of news do we have there?
Yeah, so basically, when we launched the protocol beginning of this year, January, the very next day we started to work on the governance, and it has a couple of parts. So what the governance is doing, they're making decisions on the Aave protocol. So they're controlling the protocol, the smart contract code that can be changed if the governance decides to do so. What's interesting is that the importance of the governance became to us quite sooner than we expected, because we didn't expect this kind of growth at all. Honestly, we definitely expected that there will be a few millions in the protocol, but having like 1.5 billion locked value there in our smart contracts, we definitely feel that now we need to give this responsibility to the token holders. So in essence, what the token holders are doing is that they're deciding what kind of assets could be listed into the money markets, what kind of money markets could be opened, for example, the realty, or in the future some other kind of money markets. And what's interesting in this is that they tweak the risk parameters. So when new asset is added, or loan to value ratios are changed, that either decreases or increases the risk. And in return for making those decisions, the token holders are transferring the risk to themselves by staking into a staking facility, which is called safety module. And the idea of this safety module is that if there is some sort of a shortfall event that happens, for example, like the failed liquidation, or smart contract hack, or a bug, or whatnot, those staked funds, 30% of it could be slashed, which means that the deficit is compensated. And if it's not sufficient, then there is a next line of defense, is basically minting facility to mint Aave tokens. And this is kind of a similar what Maker has in their system. And then we have built-in backstop module that sets a bid in stablecoins to buy anything that's minted or anything that is slashed. And what is important here is that, like when we decided, we call this Aavenomics, like token economics. When we decided them, we were thinking like, what is the most important things for this protocol to succeed? And one of the things came into our mind is that it's definitely like adoption, and also like how we get adoption is that we build safe and secure things, and basically we have a way of ensuring whatever we have. So actually the stakers in Aave are ensuring the depositors deposits in that way, and this helps us to get more people involved, more depositors, and more institutionals involved. So we have liquidity rewards, but they're less interesting than actually the staking rewards, because we want to ensure the protocol is safe, and that helps us to scale.
How do you value different DeFi tokens? Because obviously you have your own community, you have your own token, and we see a new governance coin launching each and every day. I don't think most investors really care about governance. It's mostly that now everything is going up, so there is a governance coin, good enough, let's buy it. And when there is a new project, you just launch a coin, you say, yeah, it's for governance, it's gonna be for governance, don't worry. But yeah, actually, what brings true value to this governance coins at the early stages? Because if the project is small, the governance will not be important. So how do you value different coins that you look at? Because there's governance, there is maybe revenue share. What else is important for people to look at if they truly want to find this quality DeFi coins and not just pick some just because everything is mooning?
Yeah, good question. Like, I mean, people tend to launch governance coins because they see that it's easy. You know, if your smart contracts will have a lot of value locked, it's a lot of power that you have in your governance tokens. But the thing is, like, when we are looking at currently, the Aave team does some risk assessment in terms of like what can be listed into the protocol. In the future, this will be decentralized in a way that we will have risk teams. For example, there might be Gauntlet or Delphi Digital that are doing one of the parties that are participating in such kind of like a risk assessment. And the idea when we are looking at these tokens, we are looking at like what kind of past performance they had or what kind of community they have, and also how much volatility this particular asset has. So the volatility is very important, and not just downside but upside. So what goes up can come down as well, and it's like this is something that we are putting into our modeling, and then we financially model what kind of like parameters should be proposed into the protocol, and then we value basically what could be the loan to value ratio, which means how much you need to put the collateral to borrow, or how much you can borrow against your collateral, and also like what will be the liquidation incentives, which means that how much the liquidators will get as incentives to liquidate a position that is underwater, and so forth. So those kind of things, like we are looking from financial perspective always and risk perspective, but also we're looking into the community, what's happening there, and how they interact with their own users. So basically, this is the model that we are using, and the difference between now and with the upcoming weeks when we have the token migration and the governance active, what happens is that the governance will actually decide upon these things, and it will be very curious for me to see like how things will play out.
As a user of DeFi products, like for example Aave, do you think people need to care about different governance decisions and how it can affect their funds? So let's say you have $1.5 billion and you let go the governance. It's all token holders that gonna do governance. So is it theoretically possible that token holders come together and say, okay, now for everyone who wants to withdraw anything, there is now a new fee, 20% you have to pay if you want to pull out your funds. So is that even possible? Is it even in the realm of what could happen? And how much could this governance really affect the current state of the protocol that normal users might not even think is possible?
Yeah, it's totally possible. So I could imagine there is a vote, for example, in different governance models, like, okay, now we put a fee, and the interesting part is that I think the governance and the voters, they cannot act too much against the health of the protocol. They can't act too much against the users, and mostly because if the platform isn't competitive enough, or it's basically what it means that and even like against other token holders, because everything will be valued in the market capitalization. So let's say if you have a similar situation with, for example, Tesla. So Tesla starts to make bad cars, bad decisions, bad cars, their market capitalization will go down because people don't trust them and or trust less. And I think similar way, if in DeFi you will see some sort of decision making that isn't in the realm or like in the benefit of the user or the whole community, people will care less about the project, which means that you put less value there, and you probably will not. You want to move to a project that is more interesting.
But I'm thinking, let's say, because we want institutional adoption. So let's say I'm an institution and I want to put a few $100 billion into DeFi. So my question would be, okay, so who are these token holders? We don't know. It's guys from across the world. And yes, while it is true that you say if they make bad decisions, nobody will care about the protocol, but they might not even be caring that much about the future of the protocol when my $200 billion is in there and they can basically take it or they can change my withdrawal fee. So I imagine that that's something that big players would be asking. And is that something that they should be worried about, you think? And how do we invite them into this industry so that they feel more comfortable?
Yeah, so there is stuff that you could do like technically to avoid it. So for example, you have time locks. Let's say if some governance decision happens, there is 48 hours or more before it's enacted. So that's kind of like a security thing. But in terms of like governance, and I think anyone who's putting money, they should actually first look at the community and what's happening here and how the tokens are distributed, like how the system works. But for kind of like attacks, I would say like the time locks is the perfect tool for that. So let's say if people are not happy as a user on what's happening, you have time to react. But the annoying thing, of course, is that let's say if you have a position open and then it requires you to close, it's not that elegant for you. So definitely like as an institutional or even like I would say that more like an institution, if you're putting a lot of money, you want to have some sort of like a stake in the system. But I guess it's the same with companies doing business as well. I mean, let's say if you're investing into a let's say whatever might be the thing or a project, and you're relying on other things, for example, suppliers of materials, whatever, and there's always a lot of trust, and you're trusting other companies to deliver, and we still have the same issue here, kind of like I think it's just it will not overcome, and it's about the community more. They have to defend themselves. So if there's some sort of like an attack against the community, they need to defend it. They need to basically get all the token holders and vote against stuff that doesn't make sense.
Right. I think the difference here is that it's just you don't have somebody to go after. In a normal business environment, you have at least someone who made your agreement, and then you can go after them, and then maybe they can go after the other guys. So it's definitely different, and community is in the centrum here. Do you see some institutions expressing interest in Aave or other protocols, this whole space, because it feels like they should be?
Yeah, now it's interesting times because we've been building for quite a long time, and I think beginning of this year, I would say like there's quite interesting, was a good amount of interest, but I think now recently the interest of from institutions has grown substantially. So I would guess like it's more about like curiosity, like many of traditional financial institutions, they're looking at the space and seeing like didn't we see this going on, kind of like and it's probably fine because it's been so small. I mean, the space has been so small, nobody was talking about it, and now that the locked value is growing substantially, we're reaching 10 billion if you haven't reached yet. So in total locked value. So what's interesting is that it gets more and more traction. So I would definitely see that there's going to be more interest, because this is a interesting place to experiment new kind of financial instruments, and you could put different kind of even locks that I've seen protocols even launching in a way that they have a max cap of how much can be deposited and so forth. So those kind of things are very positive.
That's very true. And I think they will experiment more and more and more. Maybe they already are, but we just don't know that they're here. And in terms of where we are heading and the new projects and the new products, what do you think will be the next thing? So we've had flash loans that you guys introduced. We're seeing mortgage. What kind of other feature in the banking financial world that you think will be in DeFi soon that people still don't think about?
Yeah, I think in terms of like what comes from traditional finance, I think we'll see more credit default swaps. There's a project called Opium, for example. They're working on that. They actually did the first credit default swap on actually the first credit delegation that happened from diversify, which is an exchange in DeFi. So we will see this kind of like insurance contracts built on top, and also I will see a lot of stuff related to interest rate derivatives. There's so much things you can build, and definitely like those things are quite interesting. But I would say like every financial product that there is will somehow end up in some shape or form into DeFi, and then we start to build new kind of things. I'm more interested in primitives that do not exist yet. So those are quite interesting. So you can experiment new stuff. But for me it's important is that as kind of like a base layer protocol, and Aave is just trying to be as developer friendly as possible, so that anyone can build this kind of new stuff. But we want to build this kind of like maybe. I mean, we have a lot of innovation, but most of our innovation is less flashy. Like, there might be like features that are just kind of like not that kind of interesting, but they're very important in terms of when you're building this base layer function. And the version 2 has a lot of things actually. Mm-hmm. So we're coming with the version 2 quite soon, and there's a bunch of things that you can actually do, because you could swap your collateral. So let's say you have a debt position. You borrowed, let's say, USDC, and you have a collateral of ETH, and then you actually want to change your collateral position from ETH to Link or Land or whatnot. So you can do it with one transaction without returning your loan. And what happens in the background, we are using flash loans as well. So we flash borrow the USDC, return the loan, take the ETH, sell the ETH in Kyber, for example, take Land or Link and put it back into the protocol, draw back USDC and give the flash loan back. And you can also do a debt swap as well in version 2. So instead of returning back USDC, you open a loan position with, let's say, USDT, which if their interest rate is smaller, for example. So what you basically did, you swap your collateral, you swap your currency, and you swap your interest rate. So that's freaking cool.
That's amazing, and it really shows that once you have one innovation, you can build on top. So you guys did flash loans, and then now with flash loans, you can use this swapping of collateral. You can keep building on, and who knows, then somebody takes this swapping of collateral and then builds something on top again, and then we are abstracting more and more and more, and that truly brings innovation. That is really what I mean, that this DeFi space is truly innovating with projects like yours, and it just becomes easier to build more fantastic things, because at the end of the day, if I have an idea where I need this swap collaterals, maybe I don't even need to care about how they work on the back end with flash loans. So that's extremely at the forefront now. In terms of black swans, I spoke to Dan Larimer a few days ago. He was saying that when he did BitShares, they also did the stable coins and different assets on BitShares that were backed by, I guess, BitShares. So the different derivatives. So this is what we're seeing right now on ETH with, of course, DAI and a lot of other projects doing that as well, that Ethereum is backing all of these different assets to mirror the price of them. And he was saying that, you know, if there is some volatility in ETH, it all will end badly. It could end badly. And this is from his experience with BitShares, that it all worked fine until volatility came in, and then nothing really could be done. So are you worried about that? And how much do you think the DeFi space right now relies on MakerDAO? Is MakerDAO the dependency that all projects have, or just 50% of projects, 30%? How would you say, how important are they in terms of being a dependency?
I think like every day less and less. I would say like when you look at the map where how MakerDAO is kind of like how the DAI is printed, it's usually like the whales of the system, and then you have a bunch of users. But I think more and more people are actually using stuff like USDC and USDT, and those are like the more used stuff in DeFi. And what's cool is that it brings diversity. But I like definitely what the Maker system has. now there's more real assets coming, and some of the collateralization is with USDC, so it kind of reduces the ideology behind the system. But I think for them it's a thing that they need to somehow scale, and they basically have to take more of those kind of assets. So, but I think yeah, I would say it this way. In terms of like what Dan said about the BitShares, that was probably one of the first kind of like a stablecoin project which was collateralized and so forth, and it was pretty interesting. I think there was maybe a couple of things missing that I'm not sure like how the collateralizations, the liquidations were working, because that is a big part of the stable coins, especially like if you take a look at the MakerDAO system. When the price of ETH goes down, you need to have people to liquidate those positions. And what happened in Black Thursday was interesting, that the gas price went so high that many people weren't able to, they had adjustments in their bots that weren't able to bid on liquidation prices. And also many liquidators had capital stuck in centralized exchanges which weren't expecting like that high gas. So probably they got stuck as well, their systems. So the whole ecosystem didn't have enough liquidity around. And then some of the liquidators were able to bid the collateral at zero, which should not happen. I mean, basically a bug. So then what happened in that sense is that a lot of funds were lost in the sense that the protocol went into a deficit, and they were able to, with this maker model, they were able to actually mint new maker and compensate it. And it showed that the maker model, the kind of insurance model behind it, works well to some extent. And that is where like part of the Abenomics is inspired from, and from Ethereum itself. So yeah, I think like the you can reduce the collateralizations and so forth, but it's kind of tricky when you use volatile assets as a collateral. You basically will have this challenge. But if you have enough liquidity in the space, and now in DeFi the liquidity is amazing. Like we saw Uniswap trading go above Coinbase recently.
Yeah.
And that's freaking amazing. I mean, it might even mean that the centralized exchanges might become even obsolete if we can overcome the gas issue and the scalability, because you can actually build the whole trading functionality on top of the decentralized networks. Of course, not many exchanges are interested in doing that, because the current way you're running the business, who knows what they're doing? I mean, you can run things fractionally even, but in blockchain, everything's transparent, so you cannot hide anything. And that's might be a challenge for many of these exchanges.
For sure, I think they will just be a fiat on-ramp and support in localized languages in the future, and then the backend will probably be DeFi. And we've seen them FOMO in, and Binance now listing sushi and all kinds of things this quickly. And normally it would take them, I don't know if Binance, I think they did anyway, but they list all of these new coins very quickly. But in terms of collateralization, so you said that, okay, so there is less dependence on Maker now because other stable coins are more in use, and USDC is regulated, and it feels that they are doing everything they can to stay compliant. USDT, on the other hand, is not, and they have now the investigation with New York Attorney General. Are you worried that it's a problem, because it is becoming quite big in DeFi, that people use it as collateral, and still there are so many question marks. They have been running for years now with big question marks, and crypto community does not care. I don't think we care that much what kind of collateral there is. We've shown one tether is $1, no matter what. But if the US government, like New York's Attorney General, says, hey, shut it down, and really says this is illegal money, are you worried about that?
I mean, it is a concern in that sense, but also on the other hand, I mean, if they have been running this stuff for years and kind of like they're still like expanding, and it seems that they're doing fine. But of course, like you never know, because I only trust the data that is on blockchain. So what can I verify? and I can see it's there, that I trust, and that's the kind of whole idea of DeFi. So we don't know what's happening in the banks. Like we don't know how much they actually have. There's audits and so forth periodically, but we don't know what happened in between them. And why it's important for understand when people are coming to DeFi is to distinguish different kinds of things. What is non-custodial and what's custodial, and how these different stable coins are structured, and what kind of risk you're carrying when you're interacting. Because in DeFi you can put any kind of value in per se. You can have like USDC, you can have like euros, whatever, and cryptographic form there, and with this custody risk. But I think users need to know like what kind of risks they're taking where they're holding, and understand the value proposition of being DeFi. But yeah, in general, I'm always worried when there's custody risk. Like I don't like it at all. For me, it's kind of like problematic. But also, for example, USDC and USDT has allowed DeFi to scale quite a lot. I mean, I started with ETHLend from ages where there wasn't any stable coins. So we had to lend out like USD-pegged Ether, and people have to return USD-pegged Ether, which was kind of interesting, but still like very, I mean, it's better to have something in tokenized form. And Tether was then in Omni, and once it came into the Ethereum and USDC as well, and DAI, that really was the first way of actually DeFi scaling a bit, because it first time gave people yields on their stable coins, and that was a substantial thing that actually you saw a lot of people building applications of yield optimization. And now we have the like second wave of like yield farming giving the similar effect.
And in terms of the different platforms that we're seeing right now, so there's Tron has always been around. People joke about it, but from what I've heard, I haven't used it, but from what I've heard, they have this DeFi ecosystem building up with Oikos and other projects. And I've met a few people who are serious, really seriously building things there. There's Polkadot now that is being on everyone's mind. Cardano, Tezos, I mean, all of this. Do you see value in taking Aave and expanding there, or do you see more value in Loopring and layer 2 solutions? How do we fix the gas problem? And are you guys even working now, or you will wait for something to arrive and then you will move when it's already here presented and finished?
Yeah, I think Aave is always trying to be kind of like very pioneering when it comes to this kind of things. We're definitely looking on many of these different kind of communities and alternative blockchains, and also layer 2 solutions. On layer 2, we have a lot of fascinating stuff. And in terms of we have Starkware, we have optimistic rollups, and there's also Near protocol, which is quite interesting. There's like fascinating stuff that can actually be utilized, and we're looking quite heavily into them. And in terms of like alternative blockchains, even like Tron is even people are joking about it, but definitely I see like their DeFi community grow. It's a bit like now that many things are replicated into their ecosystem, and it's kind of interesting because I mean they can facilitate transaction in a cheaper price, which is for them ideal time to promote that kind of stuff. Like, hey, if you have DeFi, come here. And then you have, for example, stuff like Polkadot, which is very interesting for developers, and they're like completely new ecosystem evolves. So I like a lot on the model where that on different blockchains, like the ecosystem has to like grow. So you cannot just like bring your whole system from another place and expect that the same will happen. Like the Ethereum and DeFi, like everything that happened and where we are at now is because of the progress, all the stuff that has happened, the hackathons, the community development and everything. And I think same will happen a bit. Like even Tron will have a lot of things that DeFi has now, like a lot of similar projects, but they will develop in their own direction. But we are looking on all of this quite closely and working together, and probably will have something quite soon on this.
And so more practical, when you started Aave, how did you do it? How do you find initial teams? Because I have people asking me each and every day, hey, Ivan, I want to start something. Do you have any tips? And I think the best people to tell it is people who made projects. So if somebody really wants to start something, and when you start, you don't even know what you want to do, but you want to do something in DeFi and you see it growing. So how would you tell people what should they do if they want to enter crypto seriously, full time, and maybe start project?
Yeah, I would say like first, like a golden rule is to take it slow in the sense that there is no rush. Like markets go up and down, and basically there's of course timing, which is relevant, but you don't want to go the cart before the wheels, in the sense that you just want to bring something that is not completely well thought about. So I think if you're building something, like try to use the whole ecosystem that there is. I mean, use the composability, and that is like the value proposition of DeFi. And for example, you can use Aave, you can use, for example, Balancer and bunch of other things, and you can build new products. So try to think the value added for your users and who you're trying to basically serve. And yeah, and of course, like security is important. If you're building something, like security is quite important to focus and not launch before there's audits and enough comfort on that side. And if you're looking just to participate, I don't know, if you're building anything and you don't have anything in mind, join a project that actually you could even like grow in. I mean, Aave is hiring, we're hiring developers, soft skills. You could reach out to us, reach anything that there is. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities now in the space, and I think it's fun. It's really moving fast, so it's not for lighthearted, but
that's for sure. And I like what you said also, that if you don't have an idea, just join someone, because you will get ideas when you're here. I spoke to guys from Statera, and they said that we had this idea for quite some time, but we didn't really know how to do it before Balancer came. And then when Balancer came, it allowed their idea to work. So that was quite interesting. So maybe you have an idea, but there is no tool to build it with, but that tool may arrive next week. There is always something the next week. So Stani, thanks a lot for being here. Thanks a lot for the rapid fire interview. Any final remarks? What do you want to tell our audience that right now is watching before we end this?
Yeah, I mean, try Aave and yeah, and join the community. I mean, that's how it is, and let's hope all that the gas prices goes down.
That's true. Thanks a lot, Stani, and thanks a lot, guys, for watching.
Thank you so much.